Hi guys, DJ Mark Almond back with you once again. Well, I say once again, it's been about 4 or 5 years since I last posted a video on here. The reason I'm here, as you've probably already gathered from reading the description of this YouTube video, that I'm going to talk about how I go about warping a track, a vinyl track from the late 70s, early 80s. You've probably already searched out how to warp in Ableton Live on YouTube and come across hundreds upon hundreds of tutorials. But I've always found that they're always dealing with current music, and music such as EDMs, house, techno, and they've all been made with a drum machine and a producer that said it's going to be 130 BPM tempo, and that's what it'll be from beginning to end. So to warp a track like that, not only in Ableton but other products like Sony and Rekordbox, is that they find it very easy to pick up on the beats and set the tempo rigid and done. The problems come when you try and do an old vinyl track, possibly from the late 70s. You'll find that they used real drummers and not drum machines, so the beat tended to drift all over the place. And I'm going to demonstrate how I use Ableton to set the beat up correctly so it's consistent. It's my way of doing it. It may not be the right way, but hopefully it'll give you a few pointers and maybe even help you improve on what I've done. You can also use it to warp a track before you put it into Rekordbox if you're using Pioneer's decks. Now the track I'm going for is this particular one here. The reason I've chosen this is because it's a track from 1979 by a guy called Bobby Thurston, and it's one of those tracks that has a varied tempo throughout, mainly because the drummer not only couldn't keep time, but also they felt it added to the track itself. And I've got it written actually on the label. I used to write down the BPM back in the day, and it's got an intro of about 118 BPM. The first verse and chorus is 120 BPM. The break that happens 3/4 of the way through the track is 127 BPM, and if you want to mix on the outro, it's 129. So you've got a real varied array of numbers and BPMs there. I want to keep it one steady beat because otherwise it's going to be an absolute nightmare to mix. But that's the track that I've recorded into Ableton. I'm using Ableton Live 9, but what I do here you can do in all previous versions as well, and I'm sure in future versions. The first thing I need to do is to bring the track in. So we're going to bring in the Bobby Thurston, and I drag it into a track in session view. Now if we look at the sampler down the bottom, you can see it's dragging it in. One thing users of Ableton will realise is that it's not going to warp it, because normally it will attempt to warp any long track you bring in, and the reason it hasn't done it on mine is because I've turned that off, and you can see that through the options menu down to preferences, and have a quick look at the record warp launch tab, and you can see here I've got this turned off. Auto warp long samples. I turn that off because I like to be given the choice. Whenever I drag a full track in, I like to decide whether I want it warped or not, because sometimes you don't. I've now brought it in. The first thing I've got to do is turn on the metronome, because that's going to help me. Now some people have a lot of problem with the metronome. They kind of say, one, it's not very loud. You can adjust the volume of this from this rotary dial down here in session view. You can adjust the volume of it to turn it up and down. Now a lot of people don't actually get on with that little clicking sound. If you want to put a loop on, you can do, because that will play and give you this constant hand clap beat. Or if you put a kick drum loop in, you only want 4 beats, 1 bar, So just to make it easier for us, we can even do that if we want. So if I just bring in maybe some hand claps, and that might make it easier for me to distinguish when a beat is hit. But that's optional. For me, I'll turn that off just for the moment because I don't really want that. But what I do need is to find the beginning of the Bobby Thurston track. So what we're going to do is to look down at the sample down the bottom. Let's click on Bobby Thurston. Click down here. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm doing that just by putting my mouse on the sample until I see that magnifying glass, and I can click and drag my mouse to zoom in. Next I want to do is to turn on the start point, because you'll see there's a little flag here that indicates whereabouts does the downbeat start. So you drag this little flag here to the point where the beat starts. Now I can zoom in on here. Now the downbeat isn't there. This has got a bit of a drum roll start, and sometimes you have records that have no beat at all on their intro. You want to move this little flag start point to where the first downbeat is, so don't worry about the beginning at this point. So if I play this track, you'll see that the beat actually starts here. This is like a little drum roll here, and then we have the downbeat here. So I'm going to slide this flag to where it starts, and there it is there. So we've got the start point. I'm going to zoom in because I want to get it pretty accurate. Move it to roughly about here. So that's going to be my start point, just at that point there. Then what I can do is tell Ableton that that's where the music starts, and you do that by right clicking over that little flag and choosing this option that says set 1.1.1. Now this gives two readings. When you're looking at a track that hasn't been warped, those three numbers refer to the minutes, seconds and milliseconds. When a track's warped, those three numbers mean something different. They are the bar, the beat and the 16th. Okay. So I'm just going to say set 1.1 from here. Now as soon as it does that, it'll attempt to warp it for you. So it's put the goalpost at the beginning, and it's then attempted to warp the rest of it. Now we already know that the problem with this track is that it's all over the place. Okay, it's not consistent. So when I look here, if I zoom out, look at all those marker points it's attempted to put in. If ever you warp a track like an EDM track or a house track, you'll notice you literally get one yellow marker point on the warp at the beginning and everything else drops into place. That's an indicator that Ableton's done a good job of that. Here I've got loads of yellow flags all stuck in that sample, and that's because it had a problem. It was going through and saying, well, hang on a minute, this beat should be here and this one should be here, and it's moving them around and trying to pin them. Now I only want the first one, so there is a little trick here for getting rid of all of these markers. What you can do is, I'm just going to click on one of the markers just to make sure I've selected that area of the screen. I'm going to do Control A, so I'm going to Control A on there, but I want to keep the first one because that's where I set the start point, and to do that I hold Control and just click on that marker, and you'll see it's taken it out of this selection. So if I hit the delete key, you'll notice it's got rid of all of the warp markers right to the very end. I've just got the first one on there. We can do the next stage which is set up a loop. Now I want to loop just one bar. So to do this, if you have a look in the sample section down here, I'm going to turn on this loop, and then I'm going to set the position. Now we know we want the loop to start at 1.1.1, which is the very beginning. So I'm just going to type in 1, 1 and 1 in there. It then asks me, how long do you want the loop to be? Well, I'm going to type in 1 for 1 bar and 0, 0, because I don't need the beats or the 16ths. So just 1 bar length. And if I press enter, you can see that this loop brace up here has now given me 1 bar. Now that means that if I now play this, let's just play the, and you can see it's pretty much off. If we zoom in, we can have a look. Now we know that we've set up this loop brace, and think of it like goalposts. I put a goalpost here and a goalpost here. There should be 4 beats in there and they should be lined up. Now what you'll find is, even on a track that's floating all over the place tempo wise, is that once you put those in, as long as they're on the goalpost, if you move the beats to those markers, the middle beats should sort themselves out, as you'll see. So I'm going to look at this, and you can see I've got a beat here, a beat here, a beat here and a beat here. Now the next beat is right up here and it's way off. So what I'm going to do is to, as you see, when I move my mouse over that transient marker, these transient markers are these vertical lines and have this kind of little flag, grey flag at the top when you hover over them. I want to grab that with the mouse and pull it back to the end of this 1 bar loop. So I grab hold of that and I slide it across on there. Now I want to lock that, so I'm going to double click. Now you'll notice that as I drag that, all of these beats also moved to the left. This one, because it's locked, doesn't. So that's my first part. If I play that, and you can hear this in beat now. I then want to do the second bar, and the way you do this is you click your mouse on the loop brace. Watch what happens, it turns darker, and then you hit the key on your keyboard, which is the up arrow key, the up cursor key. And what happens is that 1 bar loop jumps to the next bar. I'm then going to move across and I'm going to do the same again. Now if we look closely at this, you can see the start's fine. Now the end, you'll see, comes in a little bit early. There's my next beat. That should be at the end of the loop brace. So this time it's a little bit off. So if I grab that marker and move it back, it snaps into place, and I'm going to lock it by double clicking. It puts a little yellow flag on there. It's like putting a pin in on an elastic band. Yeah, so you're stretching these and pinning them. So I've pinned that. That's sorted out these, and again if I hit the space bar, you can hear that it's in time. I then click the loop brace again, use the up arrow to check the next bar. Now I wish there was a magic button in all these programs like Rekordbox and Ableton. Unfortunately there isn't. Some of them have buttons called dynamic, which you can try. They try their best, but they're never going to be perfect. Here you're getting it spot on because you're doing it manually, and there's no way around it. It's a bit of a pain, but once it's done, it's done. So I'm going to do this one. I'm not going to go through and do the whole lot because it'd be a boring video for you guys. But if I look at this one, I'm going to grab, it's just a fraction off. I could leave it, but I'm actually going to grab that and move it back and double click on there. Now, if you have a look, because the drummer was so off, that even within one bar, if you have a look at this middle one, it's actually slightly off. You'll see it's there, it should be along that line there. So I can grab that and move it on there. Now you don't have to do that because it's just a fraction off, but some are worse than others. Now if you have a look here, I could bring that one back and I could also bring this one back. So I'm just demonstrating in a worst case scenario that you may have to adjust those. But now that's perfectly on beat. Beautiful. So that's that one done. Now once you start getting a little bit more confident with this, you can start to increase, and if you find that doing the one bar, you're kind of finding that every time you shift it one bar along, that the end goalpost is actually on the ball, and you think, well, I don't need to adjust anything, so you then go on the next bar and the next bar. If your track is like that, so it's not too fluid, then what you can do is, instead of doing one bar length, do 2 bars. Okay, so you're doing 8 beats. So let me just adjust this, so I'm doing 8 bars. So I come down to the length, click in there and just put a 2 and enter. My loop brace is now 2 bars. So again I come to the end and I can just adjust it. That is actually spot on actually, but I will double click to lock it. Click on the loop brace, hit the up arrow, it goes to the next 2 bars. And I'm going to check the ending, and it's a little bit off, so I'm going to drag it and double click, and some in the middle here are slightly off, this one here, so I can just pull that one back. These are all okay, so it's just that one. Loop brace, up again, and we can do the same on this one as well. Okay. And even test it. Now you can leave this running. So that 8 beats is fine. If I click on the up arrow, hit the loop brace, hit the up arrow, now this one's slightly out. You can hear that because the beat isn't coming in, so I need to drag this back, and that looks perfect. The 8 bars, sorry, the 8 beats look perfect on that. Now I'm not going to go through and do it all as I said, so what we'll do is we'll leave it at that. Okay, just one more adjustment, but I could go through this. It might take 3, 4, 5 minutes to do this one track, but it is worth it in the end when you want to mix it in with a house set or something like that. Once I've done that, I just want to show you a couple of other things that may occur. Remember, our drummers are totally off. So sometimes programs like Rekordbox and Ableton Live, and they're the only two I mentioned, but all the others out there have the same issue when they're trying to work out where the transients are. Sometimes it gets it wrong. So what happens if the transient isn't at the start of a beat? Now let me just zoom in and let's just exaggerate one of these. Now can you see here that the transient is there? That's because Ableton believes that's where the kick drum or the hi-hat or the clap is, and it's put a transient marker there. But let's just, for argument's sake, say that it got it wrong and that the actual start of the beat is here. Now when you grab the little grey flag, the little marker, I don't want to drag it, because all it does is it just stretches the sample on the timeline. What I want to do is to move that transient marker independently of the waveform. So what you do is you hold the shift key on your keyboard down as you drag it. If I grab that now and drag it, can you see I can move that independently of the wave file? Now say if it was there, I could then let go, and now I've got a marker that I can move around at that new transient point. You sometimes need to do that on these vinyl records from the late 70s, or where you've got a real drummer playing on even earlier records from the 60s and 50s. When you go through, do all of this, don't forget to hit this button here, save, because that will save all of those markings. So next time you open this up, it'll be saved for Ableton. It won't save this new flat straight tempo of say 122 BPM on here, so it won't save that for other programs. So if you're an Ableton user, you'll know that you can export, and what I would do is I export this track as a WAV file, and that will have the new tempo in, and when you take that into something like Rekordbox or Virtual DJ, it will pick up that tempo perfectly at 122 BPM. Now that's how I do this. You may know different. Please leave your comments below if you do it a different way and you found a much quicker way than what I'm doing it. But I've been doing this for years and I've yet to find any other reliable way of getting the programs to guess where the beats are and give me a correct tempo. It's just too difficult for it. So hopefully that gives you a head start, and as I said, provide your suggestions down the bottom if you found a better way, and let's share it with the rest of the DJing community. But one final thing is, don't forget to turn the loop off and change the start point, because otherwise every time you play this track it'll want to play that loop that you've got again and again. So two things you need to do. You need to turn off the loop in the sample window, so turn off the loop. And secondly, the start point. At the moment it's starting where your loop currently is. So I need to change that to a 1, 1 and 1, which is our start point on there. So now what we can do is, let's put a proper beat in. Let's get rid of this and put a beat in. So what we'll do is we'll play both of these together and see how they sound. And there you can see it's perfectly in time. And in fact, just to prove a point, if I leave this going, even after warping and not adjusting these, there you can see it's totally double beating, call a train crash. Yeah, and that's what happens if you don't go through and warp these vinyl records manually. Don't forget, hit the subscribe button if you can, because I'm going to be doing more videos like this. Also, you probably noticed in front of me I bought one of these. Now this isn't new, I got this off eBay, and I know it's not a new invention. I've never used one before, so if you want to follow along my learning curve of how you use it within DJing, how you can create some tunes yourself, then you might want to follow along. And remember, it will be a total beginners because I've got no musical experience whatsoever.